Over the years, as I've started to research the conservative evangelical church, I've begun to notice a pattern. There are a lot of creeps in this group. People who do crimes, people who get embroiled in scandals, and at the very least, people who seem to represent everything opposing what Christianity is supposed to stand for. And I couldn't help but ask, why? Not why do creeps exist, because I know a creep can exist in any context, but why do evangelicals keep elevating, funding, and defending them? I hate to make assumptions, but it really feels like conservative evangelicals love creeps, and I just don't get it. So today I want to take us on a little journey of the 4 different archetypes of creeps that I believe are the ones running the conservative evangelical show today. Let's get into it. If you start to look into the conservative evangelical church at all, you're going to come across this first archetype straight away, and that is the greedy little gremlin. These are your Kenneth Copelands, your Joel Osteens, and their whole thing is give me money and God will bless you. So this is something called the prosperity gospel, and it basically advocates for this form of Christianity that's very surface level, but based around one main idea, that you're one donation away from your blessing. This message appeals to our core emotional desire to be provided for by giving this message of breakthrough, physical, mental, and financial. Your miracle is just one donation away. And the kicker of this message is if you don't get your miracle, it's your fault. It's because you didn't pray enough. You definitely didn't give enough, and you might just not be in it enough. So instead of these followers questioning their creepy leaders, they're focused on questioning themselves. So why would a creep be attracted to leading this type of church? Well, I think the answer to this one is pretty obvious. The financial benefits. Kenneth Copeland, I believe still today, is the most wealthy preacher in the US. But I think the deeper question is, why are people attracted to these kinds of creeps? Well, they really attract 2 kinds of people. The first are desperate. They don't have time to look at the big picture here. All they see is, hey, this person seems to be successful, they seem to have access to God, they seem to have access to these miracles, and I need a miracle. Whether it's mental, financial, or physical, I need something and they're desperate for it, and so they're wrapped up in this message. And the second kind of customer of this type of church is the affluent, who want to be able to just feel good about themselves because they continue to contribute to God's church and feel like a good person just by being there and showing up. So then all of this kind of culminates in what happens when these leaders fall into scandal. In this category, we're tending to look more at financial crimes, maybe cooking the books, that kind of stuff. If we think about it, their followers are really just using them for their access to God's miracle. And so they can continue to follow that person even after scandal arises because, hey, if this person is getting me near my miracle, that's really what I'm here for anyways. And so there isn't really that like moral outrage that you tend to think of within Christianity among this group as a whole. And the last thing I'll say about this group is, what kinds of creeps might this type of theology attract? Well, I think, again, the answer is pretty obvious for this one, which is greedy people. Greedy people fall for cons. And so someone who wants a free pass, a free financial handout from God, is going to be drawn to this message. And also people who want to take advantage of the suckers who also fall for this message. So someone who wants to come in with their Ponzi scheme or their MLM is going to be drawn into this community as a predator. Okay, next on our list of creeps in the church is the picture-perfect liar. So what is that? Well, just kind of think about an Instagram influencer turned pastor. They look good, they sound good, they seem successful, they probably live in a big house. They're someone who you want to be like. Then you hear them preaching and you hear how relatable they are and you go, wow, I want to be their friend too. That's the key influencer dynamic. I want to be them and I want to be friends with them. Enter this type of creep. So they appeal to our core emotional need to be accepted. It's one thing to go to an average church and have a room full of fours accept you. It's another thing if Kim Kardashian's your pastor, right? And that's basically what they're rigging you on, is you come into these places and you see this incredible person who you want to be and you want to be liked by, and you go, you accept me? Okay, now I really feel accepted. And so it creates this culture of aesthetic-based Christianity that's typically very surface level. As long as you look perfect and you say the right things, especially, and say Christian-sounding things, you will continue to be accepted. So why would a creep be drawn into this type of ministry? Well, it's pretty simple. They themselves are looking for validation. This took me some time to figure out as I was reading the stories of someone like Gwen Shamblin, who was known for the weight loss Christian cult. There were a ton of documentaries about her over the last couple of years. She was someone who was attractive and thin, and she had really good discipline with food, and she also had a master's degree in nutrition. And so starting off, her cult was like, a little weight loss group. She had women who wanted to be her, following her. As she became more successful, people wanted to be successful like her in addition to everything else. And so she was able to keep feeling validated by these people over and over and over again, all these women who wanted to be like her. And at the end of the day, what she ended up with was this whole culture of, if you look right and you say the right things, you will continue to be accepted. But if you start looking beneath the surface, you will be called into question. If you start thinking beneath the surface, or if you start questioning me in any way, you will begin to be questioned. And more importantly than that, you will lose your acceptance in this community. And all of these factors kind of give way into why the members would continue to support someone like her even after she found herself embroiled in scandal. You had this group of people who just keep wanting to be accepted. So all they want is for these scandals to just go away so that they can go back to their pretty little life of looking right, sounding right, and feeling okay. So what kind of people would actually support a creep like this? And this is what's really sad, is places like this are full of very insecure and desperate and lonely people who need acceptance and validation in their life to feel good. Someone like a Gwen Shamblin is giving that to them. It also leaves the door open to creeps who want to, again, be predators toward those types of insecure people. The narcissists who are looking for status in an environment like this. Okay, number 3 on the list is the projector. The projector creep is typically in kind of like a purity culture wing of the church. They spend all day preaching about sin and how to keep yourself pure and keep yourself away from sin. And then they spend all night doing the very things that they were just telling everyone else not to do. That's what makes them a projector. They're using projection to hide their own sin, wrongdoings, heinous acts, and even crimes. First of all, they preach that we're all flawed and we all sin. We can all be forgiven. Because we all sin and we're all imperfect, forgiveness is a necessary and important part of this theology. But here's the catch. In this world, forgiveness replaces accountability. A key factor to the communities that tend to breed this type of person is shame. When you sin, you might be forgiven by God, but in a very real way, you're shamed by people. And you're shamed by yourself. And in this purity culture, shame-based cycle, it really becomes very hard to actually talk about any struggle that you might be having. Because of this environment, they become trapped in sin that they don't know what to do with. And I'm not excusing away anyone's behavior. I think so many of these stories are so heinous and so disgusting of preachers and priests and pastors and all kinds of people within this category. I'm just trying to give a little bit of nuance as to why I think this cycle keeps happening again and again and again, and I don't think it's 100% bad faith actors. And that kind of leads to the second key idea. From my perspective, it seems like this type of person will actually use the fact that they're in ministry as almost like an atonement for their heinous acts. So they do something really horrible and then they go, okay, well, I'm committing my life to ministry almost like as a makeup for the bad things that I did. This atonement idea, I think, is important because it means that the last thing these people are thinking about doing is actually leaving the church or stepping down from their role as a pastor, because they seem to believe that being a pastor is part and parcel with their faith journey, and they can't just sort of be a person who obviously has some problems. A good example of this type of person, the projector creep, is Ted Haggard. He was a megachurch pastor who was very vocally anti-gay. He would go on TV and he would make these speeches with this moral authority about how gay rights shouldn't be passed in the state of Colorado, when meanwhile he was seeing a gay escort for many years and doing meth. When this finally came out in 2006, he never really took accountability for the fact that he cheated on his wife, kind of destroyed his family, was doing drugs, and the fact that he was also hypocritically being so anti-gay in the process. So why would a creep be attracted to this type of ministry? I believe that there are a lot more honest people in this category, people who get really trapped in the shame-based culture that a lot of churches have, and because of that, they can't actually talk about smaller problems that they have, and those problems just keep getting bigger and bigger. In some cases, that is not at all the case, and they are predators, and they are taking advantage of their church members, and I would put that in a different category and not really say that that's a projector. I think of someone like Ted Haggard as a good example of a projector because he obviously had some issues, right? But clearly, you don't just like wake up one day and decide to do meth. So this type of person, it seems like they get stuck in this terrible cycle and they can't really get out of it because of their theology. So all of this kind of leads to the next question: who would follow this type of creep? Because if these kinds of leaders tend to be in environments where the people are a little bit more serious about their Christianity and they're getting a little bit more of a full picture of Christian life, they should have moral outrage toward these actions. So why do these kinds of people keep following creeps like this? Well, for one, I think a lot of them do disown this type of creep. So a lot of people stop following them, is first off. But there's a second kind of person typically in these communities, which is people who want forgiveness for their own stuff. People who are also doing bad, scary, heinous things. And they want a leader that's going to give them a free pass. Okay, our fourth archetype of creeps in the conservative evangelical church is the power fiend. Now, I would say this archetype is the least likely to have had any history of actual interest in Christianity or being a Christian leader. And that's because the core of the theology that underpins this type of creep, if you want to call it a theology at all, is typically about gaining political power well beyond the church. The core message of the power fiend goes something like this: you, my follower, are God's chosen people. And because of that, God has a promised land chosen for you. If you don't feel like you're living in a promised land, that's because we have enemies here on earth. And these enemies are the forces of evil keeping you locked out of your promised land. So what are you going to do about that? You're going to find these forces of evil, you're going to track them down, you're going to defeat them, and then the key's going to unlock, and you're going to have access to your promised land. Sound familiar? Yeah. So Jerry Falwell used this very thinking and theology to bring about the moral majority back in the day. And unfortunately, he walked so Donald Trump could run. Obviously, all the way into the White House a couple of times, based on this same core idea. It's all about a victim mentality. You aren't responsible for the problems in your life. It's not because you make bad choices. It's not because you need to get it together. No, it's because of this enemy that we're going to define in these certain ways. And base it loosely on things in Scripture. They turn going into the ballot box into a sacred act of this holy war. And the message is so intoxicating because it's God-ordained power. It's power that I'm entitled to because I claim the title of Christian. So why would a creep be attracted to this type of leadership? Well, I mean, that's pretty obvious. They want power, political power, authority. They want people looking at them as the ultimate authority of whatever dominion they can grasp their little claws around. And why would someone be attracted to this type of leader? For the same reason. They don't want to take accountability for their own life. They don't want to look at the issues with nuance. And they want this scapegoat for their own anger and disappointment about their life. So all of this leads to kind of the obvious conclusion that when scandal arises, they never had a moral imperative that they attached to this leader. It was always about power that they feigned a religious context for. So, why do conservative evangelicals love creeps? Well, I think the real answer is they don't love the creepiness of creeps, but they love something much, much, much deeper. The emotional need that is being met by that leader. That leader is filling this emotional void that exists in them. So when scandal comes, when they're found out to be a lesser version than what they initially thought, their first impulse is to look the other way, is to be defensive, because it's like they're defending their own self. They're defending their own identity. That's why they keep following creeps, no matter how creepy they get. Let us know in the comments what kind of creep you've encountered and which one I missed in this list. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so that we can continue going on this journey together. And as always, stay curious.